Welcome back, Raw Thoughts listeners, to another episode with Mackenzie Tiggs. Just want to remind you that I am a local realtor to Idaho. So if you are looking to buy or sell, definitely reach out to me. I would love to be able to help you. We have a couple first-time homebuyer classes happening, and I would love to just be able to serve you. Anyways, today on the podcast, I have Josiah. So he's been super awesome. I've actually had two of his siblings, Abby and Hannah. And, you know, it's interesting having three different siblings and their stories all being completely different. And yet they're siblings. So no further ado, this is Josiah with Silverline Films. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely.
Super
All right.
excited.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm an Idaho native, born and raised here, and my parents are from Minnesota, and I am one of 7 siblings. So I got a big family, and about 20 years between my oldest sister and youngest sister. So there's 5 girls, 2 boys. So it was pretty wild growing up.
Yeah.
I got into videography probably. My brother and I were little at the time, and we were into like skateboarding and snowboarding, stuff like that. And so we decided we were homeschooled. That's another big part of our lives, is that we were homeschooled, and so we had some friends that went to public school that were in a theater class, and so they were kind of into the acting part of it. We were into the filming side of it. So we're like, hey, let's make some cool stuff. So we started kind of just messing around and playing around with my mom's DV tape. I don't know, it was an 8mm tape camera, and so we started playing around with that and started editing some stuff, and kind of progressed and started having more fun. We started doing some like cop movies and some military movies, and just kind of progressed what we could have fun with just a couple buddies. And then as I grew older, about 17, I really jumped into it a lot more. I went to an internship at my church, and it was a really small startup church at the point, and the worship pastor was the media team at the same time. And so he asked me, he's like, hey, have you ever, played with a camera or done anything in that side of things? I was like, no, I mean, a little bit, but not much. And so he's like, cool. So we kind of took me under his wing. In like a week, he taught me everything he knew. And from there, I just kind of took it on, and I really enjoyed it. And so from there, just kind of grew. I grew the team. I grew in the gear and learning it and all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, my brother's a big game guide up in Alaska. And the outfitter that he's working with, they asked him, same kind of thing, almost the same time as well, like the year and whatnot, is they asked him, like, hey, can you do some videos for our trade shows of some of the hunts? And he's like, yeah, if you had a camera. And so they bought a camera and bought some editing stuff. And so he started filming up there while I was filming down here. And we just kind of, on separate notes, we just kind of started doing it and learning it, and started doing that for a couple of years. And then we did this thing called Oscar Night. It was the team, we broke out into teams, made some movies, and then did like this big play at our church. And so my brother and I, the first year we worked together on the first film, and then the second year we went against each other, and we pretty much won all the awards because we're very passionate about it, and some of the other people weren't as passionate about it, so they just kind of something fun. And we went full fledged. We were renting stuff and getting planes and doing pyro stuff and
Wow.
trying to make actual films. And so we were winning all the awards and all this kind of stuff. So we did that for a couple of years as kind of against each other, kind of that competitiveness. And I won't go into how many got trophies or not, but I think he got the more like emotional ones. I got the more action packed and stuff like that. So
does that reflect your guys' personalities?
Oh yes. It definitely does. Like later on, it's kind of funny because you look back of what we did then and then what we do now, and what we have passions for in separate areas. A lot of the same stuff, but then there's separate areas that kind of show now that you could see back then, but just didn't know it at the time. So anyway, so fast forward. I guess I'll take a quick step back. While we were doing that, my dad has a restoration company here in Boise. And so we were starting to work for him. My brother quit the guiding thing, moved back down to Idaho. And my brother and I were kind of next in line to take over my dad's business. So we jumped in and he ran the inside operations. I ran the outside operations. And we did that for about 5 years or so. And that was kind of that's what we're doing. That was my goal, is I was going to take it over and that was going to be my business. And then we always did the video stuff kind of on the side, and when it was kind of fun here and there. And so we did this one project, and the people, they didn't pay us because they didn't have any money. It was like a nonprofit thing. And they're like, well, we'd love to promote you. Like, who are you guys? And we're like, well, we don't have anything. Just, I guess we should figure something out. So we're like, well, hey, let's just make up a name and start a business and just kind of use it for that reason. And it didn't really look at it long term of where we could take it. It was just kind of like, hey, we got to make a name for these guys, and I don't know, let's just do something. So a couple weeks later, it came up with Silverline Films, and my brother was like, hey, that sounds good. Let's roll with it. And so we did, and filed the FFL and went on. So we and then it took us about 3 to 4 years to do it part time while we were working for my dad's business. Until we got enough work to where we could say, hey, I think we could jump in and do this full time and make this our full time gig instead of doing both at the same time. Because my dad started to get the point where we were taking some days off to go and do some films, and
he's like,
kinda,
I'm going to lose him.
Yeah, pretty much. But what was really cool is he was so into us doing what we wanted to do, and he was going to support it regardless. I mean, deep down inside, I think he was hoping that we would, because I told him, I was like, I'll take over your business. And so I think he was hoping that. But then once this kind of came around and he was like, yeah, whatever you guys want to do, I'm all there for, all for you. But we finally got to a point to where he was like, you either got to keep working here or stop this and do your own thing, because now it's like, we're running the show, but we're taking days off and doing films and stuff like that. So, so finally they're like, all right, screw it, let's go. And so Mike had jumped in first because he had some extra stuff up in Alaska that we were still tied to. So we kind of did that for about 8 months, and then I jumped in. And then the first couple months were great. We had a handful of stuff that was kind of lined up, and then all of a sudden, 3-4 months into it, work slowed down, and reality set in, and we're like, oh shoot, like I got a house at that point, we got bills to pay, we got all these things. And we're not making much money, and so so that was kind of the beginning of Silverline and how we started, and I guess really quickly, like kind of a line of that.
So what did you do when the work slowed down?
We just kept working. Mike is my brother. Mike and I are no strangers to hard, long working days. When we were in that stage of building Silverline, I'd be up at 6, work until about 6:30 for my dad's business, stop that, and by 7 we were editing and filming and doing that until 1-2 o'clock in the morning, and then doing the whole thing over again, and then all weekend. So we were no stranger to hard work at that point. So when money was slowed down and jobs weren't out there, we were out doing as much as we can on marketing and networking and meeting people and calling people and saying, hey, can we can shoot stuff. Like, what do you want? And it was so new at that point too, in the freelance realm, especially around here in Idaho, because Idaho's very small.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't the social media, like Instagram was just coming into the scene, and, companies weren't buying or weren't hiring people to film their everyday life and what they were doing in their business, all that kind of stuff. It was like, oh, you could do a commercial. That's a TV commercial. We don't do that, you know? And so the small freelance life just wasn't really a concept at the time. So stock footage was a big thing. We tried that. We had some friends that were really successful in it. So we tried that stuff. I mean, we shot weddings. Weddings was like our saving grace. It's like one of those things you can get in real fast and like do a really good job, as long as you do a good job. But you can gain some traction there. And so we did weddings. We did I did a funeral, which was weird. They wanted to film the funeral. And it was it was all kinds of stuff. And we did photo and video both. So it wasn't just one. So, we took family portraits and senior photos and anything we could take photos of. Someone want their dog photographed. Cool, we'll do that. And, we got to pay the bills. So you got
Yeah.
to do whatever you got to do at that point. If you don't have all the, more clients and stuff like that to have more.
Yeah.
So,
And this kind of leads into your brands now. I mean, you have some pretty big brands that you
Yeah.
shoot for. What was that transition from going from I will film and shoot anything to now I need to narrow down what I actually want to, and I get to be a little bit more picky on who is my client.
yeah. Yeah. So to give an example, the couple brands that we're shooting for is Pelican, Suzuki, Rigid Industries, Scorpion EXO, a bunch in the outdoor and hunting brands. So Kryptek, Vortex,
You do Sedona.
just, yep. Just a handful of double H boots. We're into the Western side. So we're in a lot of different industries as well. And we did that kind of by design. Well, it's more like a lifestyle by design. We've kind of gone after the lifestyle that we love to do and find those brands in that lifestyle. So then while we're out there filming, we'd love to be around that anyway. So, that transition though took about 8 years. It went from, like I was saying, doing everything to slowly getting a couple brands in and starting to make a little bit of money. And then you kind of progress from there to, hey, this would be a really cool brand. How do we get a hold of those guys and how do we find them? And we started going to trade shows and doing this event here and filming that event and just getting out and meeting people was a big thing for us. We just, we're outgoing. We like to be around people, like to go do stuff. And then it was kind of finding those brands that fit our lifestyle as well. So outdoor life and the off-road and big into dirt biking. So in the dirt biking we're seeing, and Micah's kind of in that thing. We have kind of our two separate lifestyles that we like to do. So his is more like the adventure and the van life and the rock climbing and all that kind of stuff. So we've shot for a bunch of those brands. And but it takes a lot of work. It takes that consistent everyday. A lot of it's cold calling. A lot of it's you just got to walk up. We'll go to trade shows and you just got to walk up and get past your fear of being pushed out of their booth of like, no, we don't need you, and hey, this is what I do, and this is why I'm here, and I'd love to shoot for you guys, and and start that connection. And it's nice now because we have so many avenues that need content, like Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and all these things that need that content. So now it's easier now. I'll put it that way. The gear, like I was just looking at the cameras and what they have access to here. Back when we started, you didn't have this stuff.
Right.
Like it was digital film just was coming to a scene when we started. And I'm like, man, I sound old when I explain that. Cause I'm like, whoa, like we had one of those early cameras. That Canon 5D Mark II was like revolutionary. And, but yeah, so
well,
I know I kind of just.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. I think too, the realm of just how you market now has changed so drastically, in needing that content and why people need that content. And it can be used in so many different ways. Like you said, I mean, you can take one of your videos and they could change that into a reel. They can change that into a static photo. Like there's so many different things that you can do with a film.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's wild. It's kind of the creators are having to change that kind of their mindset. Cause some people will do a video and then they want to start cutting it up like that. And then we've had it a handful of times. I won't name who, but, they'll take in our video and then they'll start chopping it up on their own time. And as a creator, in a sense, I don't consider myself a creator cause I feel like it's not in a nice light, I guess. And so I'm like, there's just a weird kind of personality to that. And I'm like, well, I'm not really that personality, but I create. And I enjoy and I take photos and film and stuff like that. And so, but as a person that created this really cool video, give it to a client, and then all of a sudden they're like, cool. And then this day and age, you can cut it up for everything. And so then now I see everybody chopping it up and screenshotting it and doing all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, now you're just taking away from the art of it, know? And so that's hard for me to get over. So now we've kind of changed that and, hey, we'll cut it all up, tell me what you want. Tell me we need out of this. Yeah. We'll pull screenshots because we're shooting 4K and high-end glass and all that kind of stuff to where we can do that. But when earlier days when that started to kick off, it was like this, no, like you can't cut my stuff up. Like,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of this weird, I know it needs it. And that's the hard part is like, we do it. And then I've had people do it to us and I don't want to do that to anybody else, but I know those brands need it. And
Yeah.
that's how we make a lot of content. So, hey, why don't we go into it with that mindset, change the mindset and say, hey, let's cut 100 pieces. Like we did a big project and man, we walked out of there with 78 cuts or something like that from 6 to 15-second cuts. And I was like, geez, just sitting in there and cutting all these little things. But, so if we, getting into that, but you got to feed the beast at one point, with every brand. And now it's changing so much and the new platforms and how do you create those new content and even down to the skill and how you create your content and what kind of content you're creating. Some of them are, they don't need a lot. You just need, shoot, you can do it on your phone. Like most people do that. And so it's kind of hard because you get a lot of purists. Like back when we started, there was a lot of the film purists. And so you talk to them and you're like, oh, I hate digital, and they're those guys. And then now you get into this realm of like creating these really cool pieces on high-end glass and a lot of lighting and a bigger team or smaller team or doing that kind of thing with a storytelling piece. And then you get these people just creating content just off of,
randomness,
random stuff.
I mean, because that's me, right? Yeah. Like that's totally me, but it builds the brand.
Yep.
It gets the name out there. And so you do, the quality is so different amongst it.
Yep. And that was a hard pill to swallow for sure. Cause it's like, you start to see that change. And since I've been in it long enough, I've seen that trend change. And so you got to change with it or you'll get left in the dust. And I see a lot of guys getting left in the dust, or guys and gals, both. But if they're not willing to change and adjust and roll with that. And so now it really comes down to the brand. What does a brand need and where do they need those certain pieces? So, like Super Bowl just happened and all of those pieces, none of that was shot on iPhone, or none of it was low budget produced. And that was a reason, right? But all those same brands, you look at their other content and they've got content that's on a phone and lower budget and all this kind of stuff. So now you just find out where the medium, where do you need it? What quality of product or content needs to be created for what place?
Yeah.
And so, because every brand has so many different, just like you've got so many different places your content's going to go. Some places need, hey, this is probably better for here. Or, hey, just the phone's good here. The selfie, video's here and all this kind of stuff. So
there is a lot of those.
Yep.
How does that, all of these brands, that comes with a lot of travel. What does that look like for you?
Ooh, the travel part. I love to travel and definitely blessed to have a job that pays me to travel in all these places. I've been able to travel the world half a dozen times. And I've been to Africa 3 times, been to Spain twice, been to Tajikistan, Turkey, Belize, South America. My brother's been way more than I have, so I'm kind of jealous. But he's been able to do.
But you've been way more than most people.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. No, definitely blessed to do that because I've been able to see a lot of the world. I've been in true third world countries, fourth world countries that you look there and you're like, wow, that's not TV. It's, you bring that home and you're like, man, we have it so good here kind of thing. So, but yeah, I've been able to travel a lot and which has been awesome because I get to see and be in a lot of new places. And I'm not big on one for like consistent everyday routine kind of person. So it works that way. Because when you're traveling, you don't know what, you could be, you're flying and if you're going into different time zones, now your time zone's changing. And then if you go into, cross the pond and then, your time zone's, 10, 15 hours or something like that. And so you always got to adjust and then what you're filming and what times you're filming. And then there's sometimes a language barrier or whatnot. So, and then you get into elements with camera gear, I've shot down a bunch in Belize and it's so humid down there. So you got to be mindful of your camera gear and the salt water that's actually in the humidity as well, which is really weird. And so you got to kind of work with your gear on that and make sure you pack right. And, but the traveling's been super fun. I love traveling. Cool. And you always got to give up something if you're going to pursue after your dreams and what you really want to do. in that time of getting to there, wherever your place is at, you got to give up something for that. So traveling all the time, you give up your home life, you give up seeing your friends and family all the time, and sometimes birthdays or holidays or certain things that are with your family, your friends. So I've missed a bunch of birthdays and holidays and stuff like that, and being single, it's the same kind of thing. Like being in a relationship, that's really hard when you're traveling a lot, and so that brings its own dynamic to it too. So it's not for everybody. It's especially when it's a work side of things.
Right.
I get to do what I love to do every day, so I don't really think of it as work. But in that work context, and you travel all the time, that you got to give up stuff for that.
You do, yeah. How is that, being single and and leaving and being okay? Because I mean, I get it myself too, right? They're like, well, why haven't you settled down, or why haven't you found somebody? And I'm like, because that's not my priority right now. Like, I want to build something, and I think you are the same way in building something, and that is what you love. You don't find love in just a relationship. You find love in everything that you're doing. How do you, I mean, your family, you're very close with your family, and how do you navigate that conversation?
Oh man. It's tough. It's a little easy because I've been doing it for so long, and so it's just kind of a norm. Like half the time they'll be like, I'll call my sister or something like that, or they'll call me and they'll be like, "Well, where are you at?" And this time, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Well, I'm in Texas, or I'm over here." So they don't keep up for the day to day of like where I'm at. Usually it's like, "Oh, I didn't know you were somewhere else,"
Yeah.
And so it's definitely tough. It's a conversation, especially when it comes to like holidays and stuff like that. It's a big conversation. We'll try to have a conversation anyway. The biggest thing that we've learned a lot, and it's a lot of communication. It's kind of figuring out when you have someone relying on you as well, and so that's where being single, I don't have to worry about that. I can drop at a no time notice and leave somewhere, or jump on a plane somewhere, go somewhere, or hey, I can quit this and I can go, or I got to go to work and film this and it's going to go into the next weekend or whatever. So, but just communicating that with my family. If there's a big event that's coming up that I'm not going to be able to make it, then hey, I want to be there, And so, and we've kind of done it long enough to where they get it, and we've all kind of had our own journey over the last five or so years with what we wanted to do. A lot of entrepreneurs doing their own business kind of thing, and so that time that they put into there, I think they understand to a certain extent. I think there's definitely levels of like workaholic. Like I'm probably a workaholic, and so, but I'm fine with that because I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going and what I want to accomplish. And that time's not for everybody.
Yeah.
And so if it can be, it's a give and take with both sides. And I'm kind of more referring to family. Dated a couple times and it didn't work in that context. We had like, oh, hey, it sounds cool. Like, sounds great. Like the life sounds awesome. Traveling all the time, being all those cool places, hanging out of helicopters, seeing the world. But then you go into the day to day and the life of all of that, then oh shoot, that's real life. Live most times in the airport versus a hotel room versus your actual home and stuff like that. So then once people start to see the reality that aren't used to it, then they are like, well, I don't want you to be gone all the time. And I'm like, well, I don't want to either, but I do. And that's the hard part. It's like I love to do it, but I know that takes me away from whatever it is, and so in the case of family, then it's having the conversations, and I try my hardest on bigger events like Christmas and Thanksgiving, and birthdays kind of had to get pushed away, and those kind of things.
There's a lot of those.
Yeah. Well, now like half my family's married too, so all now the significant others, niece and nephew, and so no, that there's almost a birthday every month, and some months there's 2 birthdays, so. It's so that's busy. So the birthdays have kind of gotten pushed to the side, but holidays we try to make it. And the nice thing is kind of getting to the point to where most brands that we're working with too, they don't work on the holidays. Like they check out way before, they check out in those different times. And so sometimes it makes it a little easier on that side of things.
That's cool.
So,
You have talked about, how long it's taken you to get to where you are. What do you have? I mean, you continue to say like your mindset, and you had said multiple times about changing your mindset and like adapting with what your environment is. How have you learned so quickly? Because I think that's a lot of years where maybe, people, I think it's just mindset of people where they want to go from 0 to 100 overnight, but you are really showing the grit and that consistent hard work into your business. Where do you think that comes from, or is it your mindset? Like, how is it 8 years and you're still holding strong to what you're doing?
yeah. That's a good question. It's something that you gotta be passionate about. I think a lot on like what you said with a lot of people want to go from 0 to hero or 100 in such a short time. I think Instagram's made that worse for everybody because they see everything like, oh, they see it all. They see all the everybody made it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but they don't know how really long that took and how they got there and what they had to go through. And so for me, it was, I get it from my dad. I mean, he pulled me and my brother into working with him when I think I remember the first job site I was on, I was 9. And so it worked out because we're homeschooled. And that's just how my dad was. My dad worked really hard. He lived in Minnesota running farms and stuff like that. And so, but he also lost a lot. He lost his farm in Minnesota. They went into debt heavily and stuff like that, just, at the time of everything happening. And so him coming out of that, one thing he put the sword down and said, I'll never go back there. I'll never have that again. So he instilled in us this keep working, keep going, have your dreams, have what you want to accomplish and go after that. And most of the time, any dream's going to take a long time, take a while. It's going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take a lot of sacrifice. You're going to give up some stuff. And so, a lot of the times I didn't know my dad kind of growing up. I didn't see him a lot because he was working. He was working. So, there can be that to where I've seen a lot of families, that same kind of dynamic, and then the family falls apart. And that's not good either. Like you overwork and then that, goes bad. So what was that really for, So, so it's an interesting balance between my mom and my dad building that and what they installed into me. And so even all my siblings, we all kind of had the same kind of conversation as far as how much is too much work and what do you do? And usually I just keep working. And so it's just a nature for me. I enjoy it. I enjoy the excitement and a lot of things going on. So that's why I try to keep so much going on. And some people are like, hey, you should, slow down and, start dating or do this or take a vacation. Like Micah always drives. He's on vacation right now. So shout out to him. He's in the Philippines, which is like cool.
Oh, wow.
Right. But
how is it also working with your brother?
We might need another podcast for that one. No, but it's so kind of going back to your question, the long-term hard work is, it's kind of something you have to enjoy. I've gotten our teeth kicked in so many times and lost contracts and got outbid and just said no and all this kind of stuff to where you kind of become like, oh, that might happen. But if you don't try that, then you won't know if it worked out or if you won't know if anything's going to happen. So, it's kind of this, I don't know it any other way. I just, you just keep going. And I think that goes back to the mindset of trying to have the balance too with that of like, I'm going to work real hard, keep working, and growing something too. And then, excuse me. And then having that balance of mindset to know, hey, I need to take a day off and do this, or I need a reset. I need a little vacation. But even on usually like vacations for me, it's like, I got to check out like nothing. Like I won't even be on my phone. I won't even be like I'll be dead to the world when I go on vacation. Cause that's what I think is a pure vacation. I've gone to like a lot of cool places and had fun in those places, but I'm like, man, this isn't a vacation. I'm not relaxing. I'm still taking photos. I'm still,
Right.
I'm still on my phone, still checking things. I'm still doing stuff. So, but, uh, but yeah, kind of.
Well, and
It's that.
it's interesting that you say that of like of your true vacation, because I think a lot of people think of people that have to or that travel for work. They're like, "Oh, they must love that and it's great." But still at the end of the day, that's work. And it's still on your mind, and like you said, you're checking your phone and it doesn't ever really shut off. Even if you're traveling, that doesn't mean that your work shuts off. So it's not you can't even call that, a vacation of your job.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. I had that conversation with Micah right before he left. And because we had some products that we needed to shoot, some clothing and stuff like that, in different kind of locations, and that's kind of how we were putting the project together. And so he's like, "Oh, well, I'll take these couple things and I'll shoot while I'm there." And I was like, "Slow down, like it's either a vacation or it's not, you know." And so, and Mikey, even on a vacation, he's hard to not put it on a camera because to him that's a vacation.
Right.
And so, but going to your point, it's like most of the trips we do, people think, "Oh, that must be so cool." I'm like, "No, it's you're still working. I'm still working all the time on the plane, in between flights. Once you get there, then you're gonna, and especially running the business, I can't just get there and just film everything and not think about anything that's going on in the office or what's coming up and the next clients and stuff like that. I'm still doing that and filming. And so a lot of people are like, "Oh man, it looks really cool," and it must be like a vacation. No, it's never a vacation. So it's either everything's working, and then when it's not a vacation, you won't even know about me.
You're like, you're off.
Yeah.
You're off of social media.
Yep.
That's cool. I really enjoy just watching this, grow. And like you have said, it is a lot of that grit of when you get knocked down, you have to get back up and continue. Nobody else is going to do it besides you.
Yep.
Where do you see your film going? Like, where do you see the future going for you?
Yeah. A lot of what we love to do is telling stories, and it's kind of changed a little bit. Telling stories is one thing. There's a lot of films that are, in the kind of maybe a little bit longer form that are telling stories, and we love doing those. Big passion of ours. And then we also love telling these stories in the smaller side of things, and in smaller brands, and I love shooting product. That's like one of my favorite things to do. And so what I love to do is take a product and how you tell a story with that. Is it the person that's wearing it? Is it the person that's using it? Is it the location that they're going to, significant for that product? I feel like Yeti's done a really good job of telling a lot of stories and not pushing brand. And so you automatically want to be with that brand because of the story, not because of the product. And obviously the product's great.
Right.
Shout out to Pelican because they're better, But and so it's really cool stuff like that. We've done a lot in Alaska with brands because we have a lodge up there as well, and so we kind of use that to our advantage. But it helps tell stories of certain brands, whether it's a water purification. We did a bunch of that stuff last year, or it's it's Pelican products, coolers, cases, clothing, fishing clothing, hiking clothing. Trying to get some fashion brands up there to shoot, in plains and on glaciers, but you're telling this cool story with a product in this epic location. And so, so that's kind of how we see, Silverline moving forward, working with brands with all different sizes. Obviously I named off a couple big brands, and that, we try to push for bigger brands as well, but we also shoot a lot of smaller brands, and there's no brand we can't shoot for. And so, but there's a lot of other people out there doing the same thing. A lot of great talent, a lot of people that are way better than us on all different levels.
Yeah.
And so it's we're just going to continue finding brands that love what we do and how we tell our stories and how our pictures get conveyed. Because there's a lot of different styles, and that's what's cool. There's a handful of people that I follow that I envy, because I'm like, how does it's not about how you shoot it and edit it and color it and all that kind of stuff and music design, because that's kind of the simple part of it. I might get some purists that might hate me right now, but it's what goes on in their mind, how someone sees their angle of it. How's it? Yeah, perspective. It's I mean, and it's because everything's kind of the same. You know, if you're gonna shoot a car, everybody has the same space, but it's how you see through your lens that car and what are you gonna put in. There's one guy that I follow, Aaron Brimhall, that just I don't know how he shoots the things he shoots. I've watched all his videos. I watch all his like, but it's how he sees it through his mind that I'm like, I'll never have that, right? Like, and nobody will have what I have because I have something going on in my mind versus the next person does. And so it's really fascinating that side of things on people's styles and how they can create stuff. And I learn, I love meeting new guys and sitting down with them and trying to dissect it. And some of it gets kind of weird because they're like, well, or like, this is a competition and you try to do that whole thing. But I'm like, no, everybody's going to get a client. You know, we've got production companies that we know of, and we were in the same bidding realm as they were. And so I'm like, I got nothing against them, and I hope they got nothing against me. It's just kind of how it is because it's for the brand. It's not really comes down to us. It's about the brand and what are we doing for the brand and really telling the brand story because that's ultimately, you know, we're the creative, but it's ultimately for them. So.
And it's how they want to be perceived too.
Yeah.
You know, it's your photos and it's nothing against your photos, but it can be, like you said, how they look through the lens and portray that to what that brand wants to be portrayed as.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, so it's a fun, always continually getting better and growing, and how much, you know, we look at projects that we've done just even a couple years ago, and the growth that we've had in ourselves and just getting better at honing in the craft. There's someone that says that and is big on that, but honing the craft of what you have and what we do and how we shoot things. And, you know, gear is one thing. We've spent a lot of money on gear. And that's one part of it, but Chase Jarvis said, it's not about what camera, it's not about the camera. It's about what's in your hand. So, you know, if it's your iPhone, if it's a GoPro, if it's, you know, a Sony, if it's a Red, if it's an Arri, I mean, you go from $1,000 to 80 grand just for a camera of what I just said. And someone can take $80,000 camera with, you know, $20,000 worth of glass in front of it that all the big movies are shot on and could shoot something and it could not look that good. And then I've seen guys take an iPhone and make it better than what you see on, you know, better than Avatar kind of thing. And you're just like, so it all comes back to the person on what they do and how they do their craft. So
yeah, well, and it totally comes back to like the person behind the lens, you know, and I think that is a good description of just hearing your story is, you know, you're telling other people's stories, but this is really like your story of like, how did you get in there and where your perspective comes from? Because I think you know, like you've said, you've been in these brands, you use these brands, and so you know what it is actually like. You know, unlike some people that may have a motorcycle helmet and they're like, well, I don't even ride a motorcycle, so how am I going to shoot this? And they come up with something completely so far off of what actually is true. And those brands want true. They want something that they have actually done. Yeah.
No, it's a great point because I see it a lot more now. We do a lot in the outdoor and hunting space and stuff like that, and even in the tactical realm and law enforcement and whatnot. And so you can tell the person that doesn't know the industry or the brand if they might be one of the best photographers or best videographers, but if they don't know the industry or the brand, they're gonna, like I said, they're gonna shoot it in their way, which is probably gonna turn out really well, but it's also not gonna be authentic to that industry. And that's where there's some, you know, I'll say we've shot in a few industries that we're not heavily into, but everything that we've shot, I've done something in, you know. And so, but it's true. It kind of comes down to that. If you don't know the brand and you don't know what they do, then you're sitting there like, well, that doesn't look right. And no, this is how the brand is. And so it definitely rings true of you can tell once you kind of get into it and you start looking at it, you can kind of tell, oh, someone that maybe didn't know motocross shot that, or didn't know hunting. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Shot that. And so it's pretty wild. So we try to do that with every brand that we have, and stay in those spaces, and then new spaces that we are getting into, learning about it and being in it. And if it's off-road, we, you know, get into the off-road community and drive off-road and all this kind of stuff. And you kind of feel like, oh, hey, this is what captures that audience too, because it kind of comes back to the brand, and what that audience is looking for, especially because I mean, marketing is just a sales piece. Really, you're trying to get people to buy into your branding, and so if you can shoot in a way that captivates that audience, that is the buying audience,
Right.
then I feel like you've really won and told the correct story for that brand.
Yeah. Well, while we wrap up, how can brands reach out to you? I mean, if they really want to, if they hear this and they're like, whoa, I've got something that, maybe would be great to tell a story with and share their lifestyle, how can they reach you?
So Silverline Films on Instagram. We have a YouTube page. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff on there. Then obviously our website. And then off from that, my personal is just Josiah Ness, and then Mike is his Wilderness Pro for that one. But yeah.
Cool.
So
Any
that's where you can
parting
find me.
thoughts you want to say?
Man, if you're out there and creating, it sounds cliche to say it, but if you're in the spot of trying to learn how to, and you see everything on Instagram and you get discouraged about, oh, these people, everybody's doing it better than me, and I take a photo and it just doesn't work. Don't get discouraged. You just got to learn. You gotta go out there and try new things. The best thing that you could do is jump on YouTube and type in whatever you're shooting and how to shoot it. Back when we started, YouTube wasn't around. Like it was a cardinal sin to tell people the secrets of how to shoot things and
Right.
light and all that kind of stuff. But now there's so much out there. I mean, I do it too. Like there's certain stuff that I'm like, man, how do you, I'm really having this problem. So I'm just YouTubing, how do you do this better? How do you, figure this out? There's just so much information on there that can help you tremendously. And then behind the scene videos of people, of how they do things. And if you're a visual learner like I am, that helps me tremendously. I'll just watch something and be like, oh, that's how he did it. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to try that now. A lot of it's lighting, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like we got all the lighting in here. It's such a game changer when you have decent lighting versus really crappy lighting. But yeah, that's kind of my parting thoughts. If you're in that spot, and just keep creating, maybe you don't have to show it. I don't show all my stuff. But just keep creating and keep trying it and learn. It's a learning game for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think that learning aspect really comes back to showing how you've continued to do this grind, always learning, always adapting. It is a journey. It is not a destination. There's so much things that you can, and it's evolving. It's saying like, hey, this is where I came from, but like, look at where I am now and how much I have learned. Like, we cannot expect to know all of that starting something new.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that parting thought. But listeners, all of his information will be also in the show notes. And I appreciate you for another episode. And thank you, Josiah.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yes.
Appreciate it.